What's going on, traders? Welcome back to the weekly Forex Outlook and Reviews. I hope you're all having a fantastic weekend. We're going to be going over 11 pairs today, just to get a consensus of what the markets are doing, which currencies are strong, and some ideas that we could be focusing on next week, especially in the early start of the week, Monday into Tuesday. Now, the pairs we're going to look at are on the right here, Pound USD all the way down to gold, and the first pair we're going to focus on is Pound USD. Now, what we've identified for a very long period of time is that the pound is very strong. The trend of pound USD is trending up, making higher highs, higher lows, higher highs. So my idea for this structure, first and foremost, has to be very simple. If we know the trend is up, in theory, we want to be looking for buys. Now, there's a couple phases to any market structure. There's a push phase, your exhaustion phase, and then your sideways moving market. So my plan with this, whilst we're in a push phase, is a couple things here. If the markets open up on Sunday and we start to continue pushing bullish, breaking above some of these highs here around 40.39, then I'll be looking for the retest and the continuation. The unfortunate thing is there's not really much targets that we can be working with, but as long as you're managing your risk to break even, getting yourself into a break even trade, you can target whatever you like. 1 to 2s, 1 to 3s, 1 to 5s, it really is down to you. The next plan would be to see the market pull back in an exhaustion phase after a push phase. The first retest level is around 39.46, and if price comes back to this level, then I'll be looking for the market to start showing signs of wick rejections, engulfing candles, bullish candles to the upside, and then looking for some sort of continuations. If the market starts to break our retest level 1, then I'll definitely be looking for sells. A break of a structural low can definitely indicate a much stronger pullback. And in this instance, we'll be looking for price to come back to potentially an area in the market where the trend line is formed, or our second retest level where the higher low made the previous high or the current high. So if price breaks below 30.46, then I'll be looking for sells all the way back down to around 30.28.9. And I'll be looking for price to create a strong bearish close below this level, potential retest, looking for my patterns like double tops, lower highs, triple tops, whatever patterns you may trade, and then looking for price to come back down to these lows. If price breaks the sell level, then this doesn't necessarily mean we're selling or the market's going to start reversing. I just will see this as a deeper pullback, and that's where my focus will be. If price starts to break the retest level 1 at 30.46, then we have a 110 pip range back down to a major key level here. That means that if I take a trade with a 3 pip, 5 pip, or a 10 pip stop loss, I definitely have enough range here to target 1 to 2, 1 to 3, and even in some instances 1 to 5. If the market comes back to retest this level here for continuation buys, then back to the structural high where my target buys are around 40.39.9, I have 90 pips, which is again enough range for me to look for buying opportunities. So this is my kind of focus moving into Monday/Tuesday. Tuesday morning, I always reanalyze the markets just in case there was a major shift in the markets. But for now, this is my viewpoint on pound USD. The next pair we'll take a look at is pound JPY. Now we know that the pound has been very strong against the yen. We're currently in a very strong uptrend, and the pound seems to be really dominating at the moment. Now, the overall structure of the market is bullish, so our focus should be looking for buys, period, as we don't want to be going against the trend. But as the market is in a very strong push phase at the moment, and we have a key level where price previously broke above and retested, I did expect a much greater push to the upside to indicate the continuation of the trend. Now, if the market starts to break below 147.27.3 in and around that area, I'll be very happy to look for price to retest these structures and look for some targets around 146.31.7. Now, this is a 93 pip range. You could even call it a 94 pip range. And if the price is going to continue trending bullish, then I do suspect it to stay above this level here where our target sells would be. So even if price does break this structure, I wouldn't view it as a reversal just yet, but I would be very happy to see the momentum shift break this structure, break the brick wall, and then look for some sells back to some of these target levels here. Now, let's say the market opens very bullish and we don't have the pullback or the exhaustion, then I'm just going to be looking for price to break 147.97.4 and just look for your standard or your basic break and retest and continuation. Now, the level that we have here, which is our sell below level at 147.27.3, is not a retest level for me. The range that I'm looking at here, if I'm planning to buy off this level, is only around 15-16 pips. When the market opens, I do expect a gap to the upside or a gap to the downside. Now, if we gap to the downside, then what I'd want the market to do is correct first, start its momentum shift, then look for the retest and continuation, which means I cannot buy at this level. If the market gaps up but stays below 147.97.4 and then pulls back to some of these levels, just imagine we're going to have a pullback or a gap up, close of that gap, a retest of this level, and if we start to visualize structure, it will start to form a range. I'm not looking to trade within this range. I want to see clean traffic all the way back down to target levels, or I want to see a strong continuation of this trend to the upside. So that's my viewpoint on pound JPY. The next pair that we'll take a look at is Euro JPY. Now, we've seen a bit of indecision with the Euro this week and with the yen. There's been strength and there's been weakness. And to be brutally honest with you, it's really hard to get a directional bias with these two currency pairs. But based on a price action perspective, the trend was trending up, making higher highs and higher lows. Once we start to break these levels here around 127.97 and these levels here around 127.73, we can start to see a strong sentiment of bearish pressure. Now, this could potentially indicate a reversal in the market, as we're now starting to see price pull back into level that was broken around 127.97, and we're starting to see multiple wick rejections indicating a depletion in this bullish pressure and a sentiment of bearish pressure in the market. So that being said, what I'd like to see next week is if the market is going to continue to respect these key levels, I want to see how price can get back down to some of these target sell levels around 127.37.2. This is a 35 pip range, and with the range on Euro Yen, we definitely have enough room there to get into a very good trade with, let's say, a 5, 6, 7 pip stop loss and look to target some of these lows here before we get a decision of price breaking structure or price starting to range within these two levels here. Now, if the sentiment of this trend is going to continue up and we're going to start to see a continuation of euro strength, then I'm simply just going to wait for price to break above 127.97. Now, the way I see the market is a structural high, lower low, lower high, anticipating a lower low. So that means this is more sell bias to me than it is buy bias. So if price does break above this key level here, then it's a strong sign that there is a very high probability price will continue bullish back to around 128.36.1. So this would be my focus next week, a continuation back down to some of these lows here, or a break close above our buy above level and look to target some of these structural highs. That's my viewpoint on Euro Yen. The next pair that we'll take a look at is USD JPY. Now, very similar to Euro Yen, there's not really a bias that we could really fully stick to. We just have come from a bullish trend, and as you probably can see last week, we started to form a pullback higher low. Now, in an uptrend, we expect price to make a higher low and look for a continuation back to the upside. But as you can see here, after the break of 105.76.7, price created a new low. After the low was formed, we came back to retest this level, and now you can see a continuation back down to the previous higher low that was formed around 105.23.1. Now, to be brutally honest with you, we do have a reaction from this level indicating bullish pressure, and we also have a reaction from this level indicating bearish pressure. For that reason, I see the levels between 105.76.7 and 105.23.1 as a potential range. So for that reason, I'm simply going to be patient and wait for one or two things. For a continuation of this sell sentiment, I'm going to look for 105.23.1 to be broken, which is the key level it's respecting. And if it does, then I'm going to look for targets back down to 104.88.2. It's a 35 pip range, and with the range on USD JPY, this gives us enough room to the downside to look for a 5, 6, 7 pip stop loss, and then some really nice targets to these target sells. If the market continues to range and we start to see bullish sentiment, I really would like the price to break above the lower high that has formed, which is around 105.76.7. Look for price to break close above this structure, and then look for some targets to the upside, which is the current high at 106.14.3. This is a 37 pip range, which also gives us enough room to the upside to look for some really nice buying opportunities. This is my viewpoint on USD/JPY, and we'll be back to reanalyze the markets on Tuesday. The next pair that we'll take a look at is Euro New Zealand dollar. Now, it's clearly evident that the market is forming a sell-buy structure. Previously, we were sitting in a range, and as you can see, the market was moving sideways for a very long period of time. Now, once price broke close below this structure at 67.34, you can see that the momentum kicked in, and we had this continuation back to the previous lows at 166.399. Now, this is a key level in the market that price could do one or two things. It can respect this structure and continue within the range, and we'll have a bounce off of this level and some retracements back to some of these key levels. Or we can break close below these levels and then identify sell structure forming, anticipating a potential retest of the structure around 166.399 for continuation sells to the downside. That would be my focus next week. Now, as we don't have a real target level, and I'm not planning to look too far to the left, the way I would approach this is identifying where price finally leaves the structural low. If price does pull back to our retest level around 166.399, then we'll look for our evidence, which will be our wick rejections, indecision candles, and engulfing candles. And then you can work with the range back down to the low that was formed. In this instance, it's around 47 pips, and you can look for some targets back to the downside around 165.901. Now, if the market decides to gap down and then retraces, all you're simply going to do is just correct this level back to where that low was formed. You'll wait for the pullback retest of the structure at 166.399, and then you'll be looking for your continuations back to the downside. Now, if the market does start to break back into this consolidation, I would say hold fire until you start to see price retesting structure, creating new highs, and then working with a new form trend, or just wait patiently again for price to break a major low or a major high to give some sort of sentiment. But as of now, this is the plan with Euro New Zealand dollar. The next pair that we'll take a look at is Euro Aussie dollar. We can definitely start to gather some information here, which is a weakness in the euro. We can see that the trend of this market is trending down, making lower lows and lower highs. And the level that it just previously broke at 155.04 is a level where price was respecting for a long period of time. Price could do one or two things here. It can respect this level and start a range. It can reverse off this level, or it can break structural lows. Now, we have a break close below this level, and we're now in a very strong push phase, which is structure that is part of this downtrend. The way I'd like to approach this is to wait for price to exhaust after this push phase, and the level that I'm interested in is at 155.04. Once price starts to pull back and retest this level, I'm going to be looking for my patterns that would include pin bars, engulfing candles, indecision candles, and momentum candles. And then once I identify a structural low, I'll be looking for price to then target those levels again. If the market gaps up, the level that I'll be focused on is this level here at 153.864. But then again, as I just mentioned in our previous pair, if the price gaps down and then exhausts and pulls back, then I'll be focusing on where that low was made, then patiently waiting for the pullback, exhaustion, look for evidence confirmation, and then a continuation back to the downside. That will be my focus on Euro Aussie dollar moving into next week. The next pair that we'll take a look at is USD CAD. Now, the overall sentiment of this market is sell bias. The structure is forming lower lows and lower highs. And as you can see, once we broke this level at 126.63.7, we had a continuation back down to the major low here, which was around 126.13.2. Now, I don't see this level as being fully broken as of yet, because we have formed a new structural low here around 125.939. And what I would really like to see is a strong continuation to the downside, breaking and closing below these levels. Once we form the low structure, then I'll just be waiting patiently for price to pull back to our sell below level, looking for price to create wick rejections, engulfing candles, indecisions, and momentum candles, and then looking to sell this back to the downside. In terms of targets, we don't have any ready targets to look for to the left. So I'll be focusing on making sure that I can get this trade to break even. And then whatever your plan is, looking to target 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 5, whatever it may be. Now, let's say price fails to break 125.93.9. then I'm patiently going to wait for price to pull back to in and around an area where multiple wick rejections have formed. This is a previous structural low in and around 126.63.7. And then the same principle again, I'll be looking for price to retest this level and then looking for my targets back to the downside if it does pull back to these levels, which will be back to these lows here. The range that we have is 69 pips. So we'll see what happens moving into next week. But as of now, this is my plan with USD CAD. The next pair that we'll take a look at is Euro USD. Now, my thoughts on this pair is that it's quite rangy. Even though it does look like the market is trending, we have come off the back of an uptrend and now we're starting to break structural lows. You can see the last break was at 120.81. We had a really nice push to the downside. Now, once price makes a lower low and starts to break previous structural higher lows, what we anticipate the market to do is pull back to create a retest lower high structure and then look for some sort of continuations to the downside. Now, you can see price absolutely ripped through the level at 120.81.1, and we've had a really strong push to the upside. If we disregard this behavior here as a breakout break back in, and we focus on the data that we see between our sell below and buy above level, it looks like we are arranging. For that reason, because there's no directional bias, I'm patiently waiting for the sentiment to either continue bullish after price broke out, failed to make a lower high, and is now continuing bullish, to break above my buy above level at 121.54 and look for our break and retest formation and look for a continuation to the upside. If price does not continue with this bullish sentiment and starts to deplete, then I'll be looking for price to break our sell below level at 120.81.1, and then I'll be looking for my targets back down to the structural lows at 120.33.1. If we break below the structural lows here, we have a 48 pip range, which gives us enough range to get a 6, 7, even up to a 10 pip stop loss, and then looking for our 1 to 3 targets. If we continue bullish, we don't have any targets to the left. What I'll be focusing on is getting my trade to break even and then looking to target 1 to 2, 1 to 3, or 1 to 5 as part of my plan. And that will be my focus on Euro USD moving into next week. The next pair that we'll take a look at is Aussie Dollar USD. Now we can see the structure of the market is clearly forming an uptrend. We started to range for a period of time, but we've now finally just broken and closing above the major high on this structure at 77.98.5. Now with this strong break close above this structure and very convincing momentum candles here, my idea is to see a continuation to the upside. As we're in the push phase, I'm simply going to be patient and wait for price to come back to our retest level at 77.98.5. And once price comes back to this level, I'll be looking for my engulfing candles, my indecisions, my pin bars, and my momentum candles. And once price retests this level, I'll be looking for price to target some of these structural highs here around 78.79. Very simple plan with Aussie Dollar USD. There's not much we can say here if price continues to gap up or continues to push bullish. You'll then need to start using your scaling down methods to look for your intraday trends to then to be able to take advantage of this. But from a higher time frame perspective, this will be my focus on Aussie Dollar USD next week. The next pair that we'll take a look at is New Zealand Dollar USD. Now, this is almost the same as the previous pair that we just looked at. Price was ranging for a long period of time. We have convincing bullish candles breaking above the last major high at 72.61.8. If the market is going to continue with this formation of an uptrend, then I'm patiently going to wait for the market to retest the previous high after breaking the level. And once given the evidence, I'll be looking to buy this market structure back to the structural highs, which is our target level. It's a 52 pip range back to 73.14.4. And if I get myself into a trade with a 5 pip, 6 pip, 10 pip stop loss, I now have enough range here to target 1 to 3 or even 1 to 5 if I get a good entry. If the market's open and continue bullish without exhausting and pulling back to our retest level, then I'll simply be waiting for price to break close above this structure. Once we break close above, then we're just looking for your standard retest and your continuation. This is not the easiest of trades to be looking for because we haven't got a clear level to work with just yet until we get the pullback. But this is an idea you can start to look out for if it does develop. That'll be my focus on New Zealand Dollar USD. Our final pair that we'll take a look at today is gold. Now we can clearly see the structure of this market is trending down. The major low that was formed on the 4th of February has finally been broken and violated. The levels at 1787.23.4. Now, with the structure breaking below the levels at 1811.93.5 around the 16th of February, this started to indicate our structural highs, lower lows. And now with a clear break below the major low here, we're now starting to show signs of a downtrend. With price forming and creating the lower high and the new lower low, what we anticipate the market to do is retest this level. Now, because there's a lot of wick rejections within this range here between our buyers above and sellers below level, I much prefer to not trade within this range and wait patiently for the market to continue its sell structure, break in levels, our structural low levels at 1763.93.4, and looking for our retest continuation to the downside. If we get this break below this level, I don't have any targets here, but what I'll be focusing on is getting my trade to break even and then looking to target 1 to 2, 1 to 3, or 1 to 5 in some instances. Now, because the market is ranging, there's evidence here of neither buy bias or sell bias behavior in the market. So we can also wait for price to break above this level, anticipating this to be our range. Once price breaks out of a range, then we'll look for a retest and a continuation to the upside. So if 1787.23.4 gets violated and we get a strong break close above, I'll be looking for evidence and confirmation to then see this market continue back to our retest level, which is our target level at 1811.93.5. This would be my focus on gold moving into next week. So I hope you enjoyed the weekly Forex outlook and reviews. And if you did, please do not hesitate to smash that like button for me. That's all I ask from you. If you're new, subscribe to the channel for more great videos in the future and turn on notifications so you know when the next video is coming. As I always say, continue to trust the process.